Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a YouTube exclusive right here for the Round Ropes podcast. Now, guys, if you've been watching our show, you guys know we've had wrestlers on, valets on, managers on, but we've never had a god on. Making his debut on the Round Ropes podcast, the one, the only, Demetrius Papadon himself, the Greek god. How you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing fantastic, and by the looks of it, better than you, Sunshine.
Yeah, it's been a rough couple of days, to say the least, but I'm glad to finally get a chance to catch up with you. I know it's been some time since I've seen you.
Yes. Well, the pleasure's all yours.
But first thing I want to get to is what got you into wrestling? What was that first moment where you realized this is what I want to do?
I lost a bet. No, I'm kidding. I do that all the time. I was a little kid growing up in Queens, New York, and I used to, little Hulkamaniac running around. Like the, Saturday night's main event, the whole 9 yards, the British Bulldog, Macho Man, all that stuff, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, watch MSG house shows, and we used to, put them late night on MSG and all that stuff. I was infatuated with professional wrestling, that and superheroes. As you can see behind me, and as you may or may not know, I'm a big comic book and Star Wars guy. But it wasn't until I was watching the NWA, because I am a huge proponent, huge mark, if you will, for Jim Crockett Promotions and the NWA. Huge. One of my favorite times in pro wrestling. So I used to watch it when it used to come on Channel 11 here. It was WPIX at the time. One Saturday morning, there was a match, Sting and Ric Flair on NWA Power Pro. And it was just a regular TV match. It wasn't their legendary Clash of the Champions or their Bash at the Beach match that everyone talks about. It was just a TV match that they had. And I fell in love. And I said, this is what I want to be. And then a couple of months later, I watched Sting versus Mike Rotunda, a.k.a. IRS, when he was in the Varsity Club with Kevin Sullivan, Rick Steiner, and Steve Williams, rest in peace. And he was the TV champ. And Sting beat him in under 10 minutes and won a $15,000 bag of money along with the TV title. And I remember I walked up to my mother and I said, hey, Ma, I know what I want to be when I grow up. So she's washing the dishes and she's probably expecting doctor or lawyer or whatever. And I tell her, I want to be a pro wrestler. And she looked at me. She goes, okay, that's good. Go play with your toys. And I felt like Ralphie from Christmas Story. You'll shoot your eye out, kid. So that's how I wanted to become a pro wrestler.
Now, obviously, people may not know this, but you were actually trained by Homicide.
Yes, I am a OG Doghouse alumni. I was very fortunate to be trained by the Notorious 187, and I get a lot of heat for saying this, but I'll say it anyway. The greatest student to ever come out of the Doghouse was myself. I say that all the time. Homicide, Low Key, Monster Mac, they came out of the arena of Puerto Rico. They were the trainers at the Doghouse. Guys like Grim Reaper, guys like myself, Azrael, rest in peace, my old partner from the Solution Havoc. A bunch of other people. What do you call it? Ghost Shadow, Deranged. All these cats came. Devious, All Money's Legal, Chris Fishy Connection. They all came out of the Doghouse. We had Low Life Louie, who's also a trainer there. And John Shane, the greatest manager to ever be not on TV, and Lord Clarence McDougal, amongst others, Critical Mass, the Awesome Twosome. I mean, there were so many people that when I started were there. Kid Anarchy, who's an actor now. But anyway, point being is, yes, I was very privileged to get trained by Homicide, and I was also trained by Mikey Whipwreck. And I always say that the two greatest people to get trained by and the two people who had the biggest influence in Northeast independent wrestling are Mikey Whipwreck and Homicide, because everybody who's anybody came from these two individuals. They're the OG great grandfathers of pro wrestling that passed down, their training to certain people, and these certain peoples now have schools and companies and are doing very well on TV and they're making a name for themselves and teaching other people what they learned from Mikey or what they learned from Homicide. I was very fortunate to sit under both their learning trees. But yes, I was trained by Homicide and I was polished up by Mikey Whipwreck.
Now, Mikey Whipwreck is out here on Long Island, if I remember correctly.
Yes, he's a Long Island guy.
So do you have any stories that you can tell being under the learning tree of those two?
Yeah, absolutely. It was okay. Um, it was very old school to the point where they push you to the limit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not. It wasn't. Hey, let's take it easy on these guys so they can pay their tuitions and they can come back. They were no. It wasn't that type of scenario. What it was this individual who's trying to become a professional wrestler. He needs to earn his spot in this company. He needs to earn his spot in this business, and we're going to break him or make him. And that's exactly what they did. They didn't hold anything back. Training was very difficult. Squats, uh, calisthenics, in-ring training, shark bait, holding a chair up against the wall while you're sitting in the sitting position and your legs are shaking like a newborn and you're about to drop, but you can't drop that chair and you can't drop or else everybody else in the room is gonna have to do it and all the blame and all the heat's gonna come on you. But that's what separates the boys from the men, and that's what's missing, in my opinion, a lot from some of the guys today because they're play wrestlers. They're not real wrestlers. They didn't. They could say they could dedicate their lives to being professional wrestlers, but they don't eat it, leave it, and breathe it like some of the old school cats. Now, I'm not saying that makes them any less of a performer, but there's a difference between a man being a real wrestler and a kid who's playing wrestler and slapping his leg in the ring and being a citizen of Leg Slap City, which is a very big no to me. So sorry, long winded answer, but I like to talk.
I, I'm never going to say no to that. But I've seen it now. But now, looking at the fact that you were under the learning tree, both those guys, do you feel like they really molded you into the wrestler you are today?
They gave me the tools that are needed to become a successful professional wrestler because it was all about fundamentals, ring positioning, psychology, and foot. Doing no rhyme or reason should not doing it. There should be a reason. There should be no wasted movement. Everything that's done in the ring should have meaning. There should be substance behind your movement, behind your hold, behind your strike, behind you're trying to pin the guy, the submission you're throwing on, the heat you're getting, the fire you're getting, whether you're a heel or a face, all that should have meaning. If you're doing it just for the sake of doing it, it isn't worth anything, and you're not doing your job. So they taught me that earlier on, and as far as being the wrestler I am today, they opened the door and gave me the fundamentals, the foundation that I needed to build myself. The rest is all on me because I learned from my mistakes. I learned from other people's mistakes, a lot of trial and error. And that's the thing about professional wrestling. You need to be in the ring, and it's a game. It's a learning. It's an on the job learning experience. It's almost like training in the gym. And by the looks of it, you might not know what I'm talking about. But point B, I'm just kidding, not really. But point being is, um, it's muscle memory. It becomes an instinct. I've been wrestling 23 years. This past
Hmm.
July, it was 23 years I've been wrestling all over this planet. And I could tell you, you drop me in that ring, you put me in that ring, I feel like I'm at home. I could wrestle anybody. You put me in the ring with Roman Reigns right now in a main event of WrestleMania, and I'll be able to have a great match with him. He's a great guy, and I'll be able to feed off his body language and contribute to the match equally, if not more. And we would have a great contest. Why? I'm not arrogant. I'm not cocky. I'm just very confident in what I can do and what I can bring to the table because I do it very, very well. And that's what it's all about. And most importantly, as well, people can notice that. They notice it through your body mannerisms, through your movements, through your strikes. Um, there's an old mantra saying that Johnny Valentine used to say, which is Greg the Hammer Valentine, the Hammer Valentine's dad. He said that you may not
Uh,
believe wrestling is real. Exactly the every time I step into that ring. And every time I step into that ring, 23 years, I'm still learning something new every time, whether it's at training or it's at a live event, whatever the case may be. The day you stop learning is the day you should retire. So
no, and I totally see where you're coming from with this because one thing, and I'm coming at this from a fan's perspective, obviously, as you can tell, but to me, that seems like a lost art now, where you look at, the ring psychology in a ring, especially, that's like a lost art now. And
there's a
you
difference
look
between
at
I'm sorry to cut you off. Not really,
go right ahead.
but let me say this.
Go right ahead.
There's a difference between a wrestler and a worker. A worker, I'm a worker. I'm a ring general. You could train a monkey to wrestle. You could train a dog to do tricks. But a worker gets into the ring, feels the atmosphere that he or she is a part of, adapts to the surroundings, and makes an emotional connection with the fans. Whether you're a baby face or a heel, you make that emotional connections and you make moments in the time that you have in that ring and you send the people home remembering who you are, what you did, and you have that emotional connection with them and they don't forget you. And that's exactly what I bring to the table as opposed to getting in the ring and doing a flippity doodah and smacking my leg like a fucking idiot. Sorry if you're not allowed to curse on here. Smacking my leg
You're
like an
fine. You're
idiot
fine.
every time I throw a shtick with sense and no selling a punch or a forearm or a Yakuza kick to the face, but selling a chop. Taking a Canadian destroyer, kicking out at one, and then getting beat by small package. All that's nonsense. That's reverse thinking. It's like Bizarro World. You don't start a car in fifth gear and then shift it to first gear to drive. You start at first and go to fifth, or whatever the case may be. So there is a difference. It is a lost art. Working is a lost art, and very few people still know how to work and walk and talk and ad lib and work on the fly and just okay. The best thing I could say is this, John. Wrestling is not acting. And this is what I've heard and I'm stealing this straight out of the horse's mouth. No, not Sarah Jessica Parker, but the horse's mouth being Jim Cornette. He
Okay.
said wrestling is not acting, it's reacting. And that's exactly what it is. Because when you step through that curtain, you don't know if the fans want to see 1, 2, 3, ABC, or XYZ. You're in the back and you call from A to Z in your match. You call all your moves, your spots, every square inch, and that's ABC. And you come out there and the fans want to see XYZ. What happens? No one gets over. My job as a wrestler, as a performer, superstar, athlete, whatever you want to call me. What my
Mhm.
job is to get my opponent over first and get the storyline, the angle of the match over first. That is my number one priority. Now, in the meantime, and in between time, I get myself over, and then my opponent gets me over. It's a give and take relationship, and at the same time, all that happens at once. It's magic. But that is what a worker does. You go out there and you have ABC, they want to see XYZ. It's like pissing in the wind. It makes no sense. You're not going to get over because you're not giving the fans what they want. They're not going to be happy. They're not going to come back. They're not going to buy a ticket. You're not getting your opponent over. You're not getting the match over. So at the end of the day, when the bell rings and get the 1, 2, 3 or a tap out or whatever the outcome is,
Mhm.
no one got over. You didn't get the storyline over. You didn't get yourself over because you didn't give the fans what they wanted to see. So we as wrestlers or workers or performers or whatever need to be the puppet masters. And we have to control the crowd and tell them what they want without them knowing they want it. And that is the art of working. And that's what I do. And that's what Homicide does. And that's what Mikey does. And that's what so many people out there could do if they believed in themselves, but they rather slap their legs and do stupid shit out there. It makes no sense. But I digress. Sorry, go on.
No, my whole thing is this, and I said this on the show plenty of times. I can't watch. There's the Young Bucks in AEW.
Okay.
I have a big issue watching them as a fan,
Why?
and the moment I go back to was at Full Gear, Full Gear, when they're in the ring and it's Matt and Nick and the Lucha Brothers. Forgot the two names off the top of my head right now, and they're all doing like one does a super kick, the next one. It's like it looked too
Choreographed?
picture perfect.
Well, look, I'm going to say something right now. And
Mhm.
everyone's entitled to their opinion. I've wrestled Nick and Mac Jackson. Those boys know how to work. So here's the deal. In wrestling, you get to a certain point and you get over. And when you get over and you crack the matrix, you crack the code, whatever got you over, you continue to do, and you could do whatever you want to do when you're over. And these guys are over like Rover to the point where they became executive VPs and making buku bucks for the second largest company in the United States of America. Well deserved, well learned. Um, Again, wrestling is ice cream, vanilla chocolate, strawberry. You might not like their flavor, but I'm letting you know from an inside baseball perspective, they know how to work. What they do, if you don't think they know how to work because they're doing whatever they're doing, then that's what got them to their level. So they'll continue to do what they're doing because it's working for them, in my opinion. And I mean, let's look at history. Hogan takes a beating, no cells, comes back, hits a big boot, leg drop, 1, 2, 3, hulks up out of everything. Right? Psychologically, that makes no sense. He just killed his opponent's entire heat. Right? But it worked for him. Right? The Rock, great promo, good worker, finish, an elbow drop. What? Scotty Too Hardy, finish, the worm. What? But they're over. Dusty Rhodes, elbow drop, ionic elbow. You know? So, point to being is that you get to a certain level, and when you're over like Rover, you could do whatever you need to do because you get to a certain stratosphere, if you will. Those boys are there, so they're doing what got them there, and what's going to continue to keep them there. But I test you, they know how to work. So I will never say anything bad about them. They're not citizens of Leg Slap City. They could slap their legs 50 million times from here to Sunday, but they're not citizens of Leg Slap City. Those boys know how to work.
Oh, I'm not. I think that was just more of one of the matches that I've seen that, and again, I'm coming at this from the fans' point of view
I get it.
on it because I've said this plenty of times. I've never taken a bump before in my life, but look, another thing I want to bring up. Obviously, I know a lot of times you come out, you're the bad guy, or as wrestling fans know it as the heel.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find it's easier to be the heel or to be the babyface, or which one would you prefer to be?
That's hard. And I'll tell you why. I am a ham. I like all eyes on me. I'm an alpha type of personality. Um, I like to micromanage. I have very bad OCD where everything needs to be organized to my liking, and I like to be in control of my situation. So I like being a heel because I'm the ring general, and I get to control the outcome, not the outcome. I get to control the pace of the match by putting it together with my opponent if needed, or getting the fans in the palm of my hands and getting them to the point where they're so irate and so pissed off at me that I automatically get my opponent over and they love him because they hate me so much. But I know I can do that 10 out of 10 times if need to be. When I'm a babyface, sometimes I'll get the fans to cheer for me because I like sometimes being face. But the problem is the heel itself. isn't the heel like I am at a level 10. That heel could be at a level 6 or a level 7 or whatever the case may be, and that makes the world of difference. Because if they're not really hating him, and he doesn't understand that, hey, you're a heel, you don't need to be cool, you don't have to hit flashy moves, because if you do, you'll start getting cheered, and that's revert. That's like again Bizarro. It's reverse psychology. You don't want to be cheered as a heel. You want to get booed. You want heat. In wrestling, the money is in the heat and in the sell. When you're the heel, you bump and feed for your baby. You make them look like $1,000,000 to get them over. The selling obviously is from the baby face to get that emotional connection with the fans and get make them feel for you. As a heel, you have to get that heat. You get that heat, you're making money and you're getting over. And trust me, getting heat for me is no problem. My wife tells me all the time, I have a God gift to piss people off. It's like a natural ability for me. So I incorporate that in the ring, and guess what? It works.
I've seen that. I've seen you in action before, but I've also seen. I know one of your two of your tag team partners, Blaze Haram and Ben Hameen from upstate New York.
Yalla! Heels over strong all day long, baby. Yeah. Shout out to both those individuals.
But it's the same thing with them. I've seen both of them in action, and coming from the fans' perspective, you watch WWE, you watch AEW, you see a lot of the cool heels. You don't see that true, like the one who comes to mind for me as far as a true heel is MJF right now in
Yeah.
AEW. Other than
Yeah.
him, I can't really think of another true heel because everybody else to me can play both sides.
A good worker could play both sides, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But point being is, look at Ricky Steamboat, right? Never been a heel a day in his life. Could he? Absolutely. But do people buy him as a heel? No, they love him as a face. Max or MJF, I known him a very long time. We've worked. We've had a few matches, and every time we've wrestled, we've had the crowd in the palm of our hands. And I was actually face in both the matches that we had, one at NYWC, one at Five Boroughs, and one of them I was doing a double shot, the Five Boroughs one, and I got there, he's already in the ring. So he's cutting a promo on me, and I come through the curtain being babyface Papadon. And when I'm babyface Papadon, I'm just me. I'm not, kissing babies and helping old ladies cross the street. And I'm not trying to be an 80s babyface. That's not me. I'm just me. So I come out and we go at it verbally, back and forth for like 5 minutes. 5 minutes. We didn't call a goddamn thing. I'm telling you, I got there while he was in the ring. And what happens? The crowd is eating it up, loving it. Bell rings, throws a line. I duck it. Schoolboy, 1, 2, 3. They all erupt because we had them at a point where they were here. If we wrestled a 20-minute match, they would have came down. Then we'd have to work to bring them back up. We already had them here. We went straight home and we called that in the ring at that moment. And boom, it worked. Why? Because we both know how to work. And Max, testament to him, I tip off my cap to him because he is one of the last true heels. There's a few guys on the indies that work heel very, very well, and on TV very well. Max is one of them. Danny Moth is another one. He's a heel. Joey Conway is another one. Blaze Haram, Bin Hamin, two individuals, old school heels. Darius Carter, another individual who's a great heel. So there are a few of us out there. These are some guys that come off the top of my head. Um, but point being is, again, wrestling is not uh rocket surgery or brain science. See what I did there?
I saw you did that.
Okay. Stole that from Jim Ross. Anyway, point is, it's always going to be good versus evil, no matter what. When you blur the lines and you get that gray area, you lose the fans in translation, and they don't know whether to boo or cheer you. and they don't want to be the only ones booing or cheering you. So they'll stay quiet because it's easier for them to do it than to actually enjoy the show and be the loud, rowdy person they want to be. They all want to be part of the show, so we got to give it to them. So when you keep it simple and you're able to tell who the heel is and who the baby face is within the first 10 seconds of the match or within the entrance even, then it's easy. It's an easy day at the office because you know what you need to do. When you complicate the issue and you try to be the cool heel and you try to be the tough guy baby face, then shit gets lost in translation. They don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? Wrestling is like a variety show. It's like a circus. You don't go to the circus to see the clown stick his head in the lion's mouth, and you don't see the tightrope walker trying to juggle chainsaws. Everyone has their place in the on the card, in the match, whatever the case may be, and they need to know their place. You know, so
But when you mentioned the heel, all of the guys you mentioned, I agree on 100% because I've been lucky enough to get to see a lot of them in action. And you go to Darius Carter, for example, his entrance alone gets him booed right away.
yeah, trust me. So does mine. We watch each other's matches all the time, and we always, tip our calves off to each other. And I go to him, hey, you know what you did? That was awesome. And it's not even a move. It's like a real minor thing. He goes, you picked up on that, huh? I'm like, of course I did, dude. And then he'll do it to me. Hey, Pops, I saw what you did there. You did this little thing right there. That was magic. Oh, you saw that, right? Yeah, good. But the only thing I'm going to say about this, about Darius, and I don't want to catch heat with him regarding this. And if I do, I don't give a fuck. But he's too talented to be wrestling girls all the time. I don't think, Darius, stop wrestling the chicks. Seriously, because you're wrestling these girls and then you're wrestling the guys, and the girls and the guys are taking the same moves and selling it the same way, and you're diluting yourself. You're better than that. Anyway, that's just my opinion.
I'm totally in agreement with you on that. Obviously, we mentioned before you work for some of the big promotions in New York. For people who may not know, can you just run down some of the promotions that you
I
do
wrestle,
work with?
I've wrestled and wrestled for everyone. Let's see. Uh, NYWC here in Long Island, Alpha Championship Wrestling in Queens, Ronin Wrestling in Florida, Virginia Championship Wrestling in Virginia. Um, let's see, Immortal Championship Wrestling, even though I'm not on their next show. I wasn't on their last show. You're dropping the ball there, Mike King. Anyhow, I think he's pissed at me, but whatever. Um, where I'm going to Canada soon for a promotion that's reopening up. Um, Wrestled all over California with Dave Marquez when he had Hollywood Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and United Wrestling Network. Wrestled for Alternative Wrestling Syndicate. Wrestled for Wrestling Cares that was all over the country. Wrestled for AML in North Carolina. Wrestled for I wrestled in the UK for Brian Dixon in All Star Wrestling. Uh, wherever I can get booked, I've worked. JAP, JCW, uh, LIWF, ICW, Jack Sabbath's ICW, um, Hog. I've done stuff with WWE. I've done stuff with TNA. Done stuff with Ring of Honor. Done stuff with AEW. Done stuff with the NWA. Not the current rendition of the NWA under Billy Corrigan, but prior owners and affiliates of the NWA. Um, wrestled everybody almost. Everyone in AEW I've wrestled, from Punk to Joe to Homicide to Brian Danielson. You know, 23 years traveling up and down the roads. That's what happens.
No, I totally get that. And then obviously, we don't have to go through all the people you've wrestled. You've wrestled a lot, but if you can name off, like, I would say, let's go three of your favorite opponents that you've wrestled in your
Well,
career.
I always say my favorite opponent is my next opponent. That's my number one answer. But I'm going to give you a little bit more flavor on the a little more color on this question. Tony Nese is one of my favorite opponents. Him and I have wrestled a million times, and we always steal the show. Um, Bobby Fish, one of my favorite opponents. We always have good matches. Josh Daniels, who doesn't wrestle anymore. was one of my favorite opponents. Azrael, one of my favorite opponents. Um, oh, what was his name? Oh man, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank now. I wrestled him a few times. I think I wrestled him at I beat him for the number one contendership at Northeastern NEW. He's from the Bronx. Jorge Santi. Maybe
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know him, but he's a great worker, and I have great matches with him. I love wrestling with him. Um, Danny Moff, Steve Mack, love wrestling with him. Had a great last man standing match that we had the privilege of honoring Bobby Lombardi with that match, who have passed away. May he rest in peace. Founder of the Doghouse. Low Life Louie, love wrestling him. Believe it or not, he can wrestle people. He can actually wrestle. Him and I had a 30-minute old school classic in the Doghouse. He doesn't like me telling people that because hey, bro, you're killing my gimmick. I'm a hardcore wrestler. He can work, boys and girls. He can work. Um, you know, look, I like wrestling anybody. I've wrestled anybody, like it doesn't matter to me. I can make, and I don't want to sound again arrogant. I'm confident. I can make anybody look like $1 million, and I can get into anyone's head, you know, whether they know it or not, and make that emotional connection and get them vested emotionally in what I'm doing in that squared circle. And they're it. They're done. Boom. They love it or they hate it. They're gonna go home. They're gonna remember me because that always happens. They go home. They're always remembering the Greek guy who wrestled, who was just a malaka and an asshole, and they hate me for it. So I'm doing my job.
That's all you're supposed to be. That's all you're supposed to do. One last question I got on the wrestling side, and then I want to look at the Star Wars stuff for a second.
Sure.
Obviously, you've had some interactions with one of our co-hosts here, Brian Peterson.
Yes, I have.
Do you have any funny stories you can tell us working with him?
Uh, let's see. In all honesty, Ryan's a good dude, and I like him a lot. But I always fuck with him. I'm sorry, I always mess with him when I come to the ring. I call him diabetes all the time, and it always gets a pop. You know, I call him Fat Jim Cornette because he looks like he ate Jim Cornette. Um, and he knows it, and he laughs, and he loves it, and it's just a thing that we do. And he's good at what he does, and I'm happy for all the success that he's gotten because he's earned it. And I wish him nothing but a ton of more success in the business because he's a good kid and he's too good for the business. Let me put it like that.
One question I got in regards to the Star Wars stuff for a second.
Sure.
What's your favorite Star Wars movie?
Empire Strikes Back.
That no, I agree. That's one of my favorite ones also.
Oh, it should be. It's a great movie. Hold on one second. Let me just
Yeah,
hold on one second.
yeah, you're good. Guys, we're being joined right now by the Greek god himself, Papadon. You can catch this or any previous interviews we've done over on our YouTube page, youtube.com/at the ATR. Also, folks, if you're listening to us on the podcast side, definitely go hit the subscribe button. Costs you nothing, does wonders for us.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good. No, but I've seen quite a few of the Star Wars. I think they're some of the best movies out there.
I agree. I am a diehard nerd when it comes to Star Wars. I have my own Star Wars podcast with Dr. Alex Arroyo. It's called The New Force Order, aka the NFO podcast. And we stole the NWO sign logo. We put a big F for Force instead of a W for World. And that's what we did. It's a mesh of wrestling and Star Wars. Catch us on all the platforms: Spotify, Podbean, um, whatever else, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. We're on there. Like, subscribe, leave us a notification, give us a review, 5 stars if you can, if you like it, 4 stars, whatever. Uh, it helps the algorithm bump up our podcast. And I'll be honest with you, it's not your typical paint by numbers podcast. We are two guys who grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and we're not PC. And we do a lot of jokes and a lot of things that might offend people. But personally, I can care less because if you're easily offended, too bad, man up. You know, I'm not from this generation where I need a safe space. I'm offended. Piss off. Life's difficult. You know, if you can't lose yourself and in the moment of comedy and disbelief and whatever, and everything triggers and offends you, then stop taking up oxygen and go jump off go take a long walk off a short pier, or jump off a cliff or something. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Oh, I'm totally in agreement with that because not to go off on a side note here, but one of my favorite directors growing up was Mel Brooks.
Oh, of course. Are you gonna watch History of the World 2, the series?
I didn't know they were. I thought that was. I didn't know they were actually coming out with that.
Yeah, yeah.
I did not know that. But if you look at some of his movies with Spaceballs, Blazing Saddles,
Men in Tights.
Men in Titan, you can never. Those movies would never be able.
Listen, man, wrestling from the '90s wouldn't be able to pass now. Hip hop, real hip hop, like Biggie and Nas, all that stuff from the '90s. None of that would pass now. We're
No,
living in a snowflake generation where everyone's living in their own personal bubble, and it's ridiculous. But let's not get political or on this podcast, because
oh,
we'll go down this rabbit hole. We'll be here forever.
oh no, no, no. That's just the only thing. Um, Two last questions I got. If you and I know you've had a lot of opponents that you face, but if you had one opponent that you can face from any generation, doesn't matter where they were, what promotion they were with, who would it be?
Oof. That's difficult. That is difficult because I would say right off the bat, William Regal. William Regal. I have a top five that I would love to wrestle,
Mhm.
and I don't think it'll ever happen. William Regal, Fit Finley, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero. Not in that order, but those are the five. And Jericho's six, but that may still happen. So
And last question I got: what would be one arena that you would love to work in, or stadium, or
Tokyo Dome, second by Madison Square Garden, because I already wrestled Madison Square Garden. One time I was doing extra work for WWE, and it was myself and Rob Vegas versus the Briscoe brothers before Raw, in front of like all the WWE roster and agents and stuff like that. And we had a tag team match. So did I wrestle in the Garden? Yes. Was it in front of fans? No. Was it in front of other wrestlers and other people? Yes. So I chalk it up. I had a match at the Garden. So that's the way I look at it. Whether fans are there or not doesn't necessarily matter. People were there, and it was a good match. And sucks what happened to Jay Briscoe. May he rest in peace. And they're both great guys. So
that's actually a very interesting story there. Papadon, it was an honor to have you on today. Definitely appreciate it. Before I let you go, though, do you have any events you'd like to promote as far as upcoming shows that you have?
yeah, sure. The 25th of February, I'll be at NYWC Psycho Circus. It's their big show of the year out on Long Island. It's not going to be at the Sportatorium. I think it's in a bigger venue. I think it's in Central Islip out at Suffolk. Um, March 18th, I will be in Victory. Sorry, Virginia Championship Wrestling in Virginia. Um, that's going to be one hell of an event. I just got suspended there. I had a match with Dirty Money, right? And it was a championship, champions advantage match. After a year being the United States Liberty champion,
Mhm.
the match stipulations were he had to make me say I quit. That's the only way he could win the match and win the championship, right? At the end of the match, he put me in a submission. The stupid referee asked me, "What do I say?" I said yes. I didn't say I quit, and they still gave him the championship in an I quit match that I didn't say I quit. I said yes. So, uh, and I got pissed off when I put my hands on the announcer. They suspended me from their event that they're going to have in February. So my comeback is going to be in March, and I'm coming back with guns ablazing, and everyone's on my shit list in Virginia Championship Wrestling. But also the 31st, Wrestling is Now. I will be on that event, and I'm looking forward to that because I get to step in the ring with Chris Cage. Now, the kid has a lot of potential. He definitely does. Decent look. Was trained by Joel Maximo, and I know Joel, good friend of mine, good wrestler. Shout out to the originals, the S.A.T, not the S.A.P. What a fucking gimmick infringement that is. Um, but Chris Cage, if you're listening to this, you see this, I'm gonna tell you this and tell you this once. You have a lot of potential, but I eat potential for breakfast. So I'm gonna kick your ass on the 31st because there's no way you're making a name, for yourself on my expense. You're stepping into my ring, you're stepping into my company that's gonna be my company. Guess what? You say you respect me because I'm an OG in the game? Fine. Let's see if I respect you. You're gonna have to earn my respect. And if you do, good. But I'm still gonna whoop your ass. So don't worry about it. And that's gonna be on the 31st of March in New Jersey.
At the place that everybody calls the Mecca.
Yes.
And again, also before I forget, where can people find you on social media? They like to follow you.
All right. Well, you can find me at Greek God Papadon on Instagram and Twitter and Getter, even though I really don't go on Getter much. Um, Demetrius Papadon is Facebook. The YouTube channel is Greek God Papadon. Please go subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, comment, all that stuff that you do that helps people, I don't know, prop up my numbers on YouTube. Um, I have a Pro Wrestling Tee store, Pro Wrestling Tee / Greek God Papadon. Go get your good designed Greek God Papadon t-shirts. Most of them are designed by either Spiro Antonopoulos or Alex Arroyo, both the co-hosts of the New Force Order podcast, which is my Star Wars podcast and their Star Wars podcast. And you can catch us at NFO_podcast on Twitter, New Force Order on Instagram, and official New Force Order on Facebook. I'm also part of the Conspiracy Horsemen with Bin Hamin, Big Sal Graziano, and Stevie Richards. We are four wrestlers who always talk about free thinking, conspiracy theories, questioning the narrative, bringing whatever scenario to the table and giving you our analysis, not saying what you believe is wrong or what we believe is right. We actually got blackballed and got shadow banned because we were picking up so much steam. So hopefully we can come back with that. We've done a few. It's been real difficult trying to get that back on and running on a steady basis because of everyone's schedule. But you can find me right then and there. You can find me, stealing every show I'm on and kicking ass and making that emotional connection with you fans.
But again, Papadon, thank you so much for hopping on today. I definitely appreciate it. Definitely going to have you on again. The door is always open for you to come back on the show.
Just let me know, and that check better not bounce, or else I'm going to kick your ass too.
For the Greek God, I'm John. This has been another installment of the On the Ropes podcast. We'll catch you guys on the next one.